How are you?
Hello, Facebook. How are you?
Real nice. And normally meeting, but today I guess.
All right, so we're live, and this, by the way, this is Sourena Vasseghi. I'm Jamila Doolin, and not that the other person with us needs an introduction, but I think you're going to give him one anyway, Sourena?
Yeah, I
Right, so Sourena is, if you guys don't know, he's the speaker who can't speak, he's the writer who can't write, and his job is to motivate, to inspire, and to get you to achieve your goals.
No, I wrote with he was my mentor.
Would you repeat that for me, please, Sourena?
I wrote with that. He's one of my mentors.
Right, so our special guest today is one of Sorena's mentors. Right, what Sourena said was, as you know, it's important to have mentors. And it's because they look at things from an entirely different angle than you do.
And just top strategy in the country.
Right. So Sorena's blessed. His mentor is Joe Calloway. And Joe Calloway is one of the best, one of the top business, leadership development speakers, thinkers, thought leaders in the country. In fact, not even in the country, in the world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a Hall of Fame speaker and a best-selling author.
I do.
We're really blessed and lucky to have Joe with us. So, why wait any longer? Hi, Joe.
Hi, how are you, Joe?
I'm great, and I got to tell you, however much a blessing it is for you, it's equal or more for me. And I have to say something. Sourena said I was his mentor. Once I got to know him and started listening to and reading him, Sourena, the mentee has become the mentor because you teach me as much or more than I've ever taught you, my friend.
I really appreciate how we network. I set up for incident 11. I set up with a speaker idea in today 11.
Oh, so you're setting up a speakers roundtable?
No, it was fun. I went to a speaker roundtable.
Oh, you went to a speakers roundtable in 2011?
Yeah, that was 2011 and Larry.
And that speakers roundtable included Joe Calloway and Larry Wingett.
Yeah, and
and that's how you met Joe.
And it was 10 speakers.
And it was 10 speakers.
With Joe and Larry.
With Joe and Larry.
Just talking about business. What for 10 hours?
And you guys just talked about business for 10 hours.
And it was amazing. If you realize you gotta just send it up and you guys.
And you said it was amazing, and if
you would become amazing, you gotta just send it up and you guys.
And if you want to become amazing, you need to get some of that in your life.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
I love that. Thanks, Sourena.
Tell about yourself.
So, Joe, what Sourena asked was, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I've been doing, it's been an evolution, but I started in my career about, 36 years ago, and I've done a lot of, I started out doing customized workshops for businesses on all sorts of different topics. And then that turned into doing keynote speaking at business events, and I've done thousands of those over the years. And what I talk about has also it's been an evolution. It tends to change every few years. And for one thing, I get bored really easily. So I have to move on to something different. For the last few years, I've really concentrated on leadership. Most of my work now is a couple of things. I write books. My 8th book just came out, but I do workshops with generally groups of senior leadership from a company. And I've also started doing some coaching of entrepreneurs and solo practitioners and business owners. So, it's been a fascinating career because every time I work with somebody or every time I work with a group, I learn. And so it's been a path of constant, continuous learning, which has really fed me creatively and in lots of other ways. So it's been a wonderful ride. I've enjoyed it.
What is your age right now? Business. What is your age right now in business?
So the question was this. As of right now, what issues are you seeing in business?
It's interesting. One of the big things, I was on the phone this morning with a client that I'm going to be working with. It's a group of bankers, and I'll be working with them in a couple of weeks. And what they're talking about is what a lot of people are talking about, which is change, although the current word for that is disruption. And there are people in just about every business you can think of who are starting to really give a lot of thought to what's going to happen in our business and our industry. Sourena, we could look at it in what we do. What's going to happen in the world of speaking that could change it to the point that you or I could become obsolete. We could become irrelevant. And so I'm just like everybody else in business. And that's a real important word to me, is how do I stay relevant in a world where technology is changing everything, customers' expectations are changing all the time. And it's not that change is new. We've always had change. But the rate of change is so much faster than it's ever been before. And a lot of times, the scale of change, you look at what Uber did to the taxi business. You look at what Airbnb did to the travel and hotel business. And so that's one of the things that's top of mind for a lot of people. How can I anticipate change, and instead of being a victim of change, be a driver of change?
So when you talk to people change.
Right. So right now, if you had to advise somebody, or you could tell them what your thoughts are about change, what would you say? That was your question, right, Sourena? Okay. Want to make sure I got it right.
I honestly would go back to the word I used just a minute ago. I would say, are you staying relevant? And here's the tricky part of that. We tend to think, and it's hard, it's not easy, but we tend to think, well, yeah, I'm relevant to my customers, they're happy, but the question is, are you going to be relevant a year from now or 2 years from now? And not only do you not necessarily know what your customers are going to want a year or two from now, they don't know what they're going to want a year or two from now. So that's why I'm such a fan of constantly watching the marketplace and reading and listening to everything that you possibly can. I feel that, it's interesting, Sourena, the way I define my job is not that I'm a speaker. That's just a delivery system for the ideas, just like my books are, the workshops. My job is to understand the marketplace, how the marketplace is changing, and how I can help my clients create opportunity from that. But the exact same thing applies to me. And particularly lately, I've given a lot of thought to what's the business that I'm in, what's it going to look like a year from now, 3 years from now? Because I just think there are a lot of changes coming down the road. I don't necessarily know what they are. But again, the anchor for me is I've got to stay relevant.
How
I'm sorry?
How would you change it?
Okay, so industry specific for speaking. What changes have you seen, or what changes do you think are afoot?
Oh my gosh. Let me tell you the biggest change. The biggest change is the massive influx of new people into this business. I mean, it used to be not that terribly long ago that if somebody wanted a speaker like me, and I tend to be a general business speaker, in the price range where I am, they would have a big handful. You know, there were maybe 20 to 30 of us that our names came up all the time. And we all knew each other and we were all competitors. But now there's 1,000 people that do what I do. And a lot of them are really good. And there are people getting into this business like CEOs, former CEOs, millennials who have been successful at starting and selling businesses, college business professors who started looking around going, hey, I could go out, in addition to being a teacher, I could go out and be giving these speeches. The other thing that's happened is everything that I talk about, people can get access to that subject matter on the internet. They can go to TED Talks and hear some of the best speakers in the world, 16 to 20 minutes at a time. Things that people used to buy, like people in our business, Sourena, used to sell videos on different topics. And that was a real moneymaker for them. But now the new price is free. You can get darn near any kind of information you want, any kind of motivation you want, any kind of inspiration you want on the internet for free. Now, that doesn't replace the personal connection that we can make when we are actually in a room with a group of people. I mean, you can't duplicate that on the internet, no matter how good the source is or the speaker is. So there's certainly still a place for what you do, what I do, but it's become infinitely more competitive, and the internet has made a big part of what we do available to everybody, and it doesn't cost them a thing.
How do you cut through that noise?
How do you cut through all that noise? Yeah, so how is it possible to cut through all that?
You know, for me, and I'm not saying this is the way everybody should approach it, but I was thinking about that just today. I do a lot of posting on social media, and for me, the main one is LinkedIn. A lot of people that are clients and potential clients of mine are on LinkedIn. The same is true for Facebook, particularly my business page. And when I post something, or even if I'm giving a speech, Sourena, and I say something, I don't want it to be something where the reaction is, yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard a lot of people say that. I want to say something that makes them go, wow, I never thought of it that way, or I never looked at it that way. So I've got to bring something unique and new, but valuable. It's got to have value. I mean, the noise is sameness. And if I get up in front of a group of people and start telling them the same thing they've heard from 20 other speakers over the last few years, they're going to get out their smartphones and start checking their email. And I don't blame them. So I've got to find a unique, differentiating way to pass on ideas that truly stands out from that noise and gets people's attention. But again, it's got to have value. They've got to be able to use it.
How long? The trend of when did you start seeing all this? Yeah, all of these trends stop. When did you start seeing all of these trends?
I'd say 6-7 years ago was when I really felt kind of a tipping point. And I tell you, Sourena, a big part of it is going back to what I initially said, the number of new people that have gotten into our business. There are a lot of startups that have nothing to do with our business, but they come up with a technology that say an app, and it lets people do something, and it's very popular, and they say, well, we've got it made now. People love what we do. But it turns out, unless they can somehow get a patent on it, which is a little unusual, there may be what's called a low barrier to entry, and 200 other people can roll out exactly the same product. And so I think we live in it's kind of a double-edged sword, because I think there's as much or more opportunity than there has ever been, not just in what we do, but in all sorts of businesses. And at the same time, there are so many more people that are doing it. It's like people I know, Sourena, that'll say, oh, I've got a new program and I'm going to sell 1 million of them. And I say, how are you going to do that? Oh, I'm going to put it on the internet. Well, everything's on the internet. How are they going to find you? And I go back a year later and say, how'd you do? And they say, I sold 3 of them. It just didn't happen. And that's because, as you said, there's a lot of noise out there, and it's hard to break through.
In your book, that's communicate. What is that about? How do you do?
All right, so you're talking about the book Category 1?
Yeah.
Category is 1?
Yeah.
And you want to know what it's about? And what else?
How can an entrepreneur apply it?
And then how can an entrepreneur apply it to what they do?
Yeah.
Hang on. I've got a prop. He's talking about this. This was my first book. It remains my biggest seller, still very popular. It's called Becoming a Category 1. Here's the idea. Let's pretend like these apples, these 5 red ones and this 1 green one, they represent the marketplace that you are in. And they specifically represent you and your competition. Well, if these apples are you and your competition, which apple do you want to be? This one. You want to be the green apple. And so a lot of my work has been and still is around the idea of what you were just talking about, which is how do you stand out? How do you differentiate yourself in such a way that people look at you and your competition and they go, okay, these guys are good at what they do. They do a perfectly good job. But this one, there's something about this one that really makes you stand out. And the way to get to that, there's lots of ways to get to that. Some people get to it with price. Walmart would be a great example. It's like, look, what we sell is not really any different than what everybody else is selling, but we're a lower price. Another would be, and this is tough to be, but another would be, you can't find what we do anywhere else. We're the only ones. That's rare. But I mean, if you can pull that off, that's pretty incredible. The other would be value/quality. You know, my wife and I are taking our kids back to Disney on spring break, to Walt Disney World. And they both went when they were little, but now they're older and they want to go back. Disney is a great example of, I mean, there's amusement parks all over the place. But they ain't Disney. Disney, whether it's Walt Disney World or Disneyland or a Disney cruise, there's nothing quite like it. There's other amusement parks with rides and all that, but there's something about the culture at Disney, the way they've put all those pieces together that has created something, well, I'll use a word that Disney would use. It's magic. And it has people go back over and over and over. It also has those people say, hey, you got to go on a Disney cruise. It's unbelievable. They've got millions of people out there selling their product for them. So the way to stand out it is open to all sorts of different approaches. Here's the trap, though, Sourena. A lot of times people will assume, they just assume it. They say, and in speaking, I've heard this a lot. People say, oh, well, there's not any better speaker than me. I'm the best speaker there is. And I think, what's it like on that planet? Because on the planet I live on, my competition is so good at what they do. I mean, they're crazy good at what they do. And I have to work really, really, really hard just to keep up, much less to pull ahead. So it's not easy getting to this space and being that green apple, but it's what we have to try and shoot for because it's the only way to stay viable and stay profitable.
When you realize they're more relevant today,
do you feel like that's even more relevant today with all of that noise that we're hearing on the internet and through so many other mediums? Is it?
What was the first part of the question? Do
you feel like that idea of separating yourself from the pack is even more relevant today than it was? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it goes back to what we were just saying. I think it really is, because today they've got so many choices in almost anything and everything that I think it's much tougher to stand out. I think if you can stand out, it's a huge advantage. Here's a tip for everybody. I don't care what business you're in. I know it applies to our business. Think about the companies that people say are the classic disruptive companies. Uber. Well, what did Uber do? Uber made it easier to get a ride. Amazon, which is pretty much runs the world now. But what did Amazon do? They made it easier to buy anything. Google, what did Google do? Made it easier to use the internet. And one of the things that I try to do is give people ideas in such a way that it's easy for them to go, I see how I can use it. I see how that's of value to me. Plus, just with the people that hire me, the bureaus that book me, I try to be the easiest person to do business with of everybody that they do business with. That would be a concrete piece of advice that everybody listening and watching could take on, which is look at every facet of your business and think about how can I make this easier to understand, to access, to buy, to use, to recommend. You mean that virtually every app that everybody has on here, the reason you have it is because it makes it easy to do something. Mm-hmm. I've got the Walt Disney app on here. So that when we go to the park, I can use the app to get us in line for the next thing we're going to. I mean, it makes it easier to do. So file that one away, everybody. Be easier. Make something easy.
Do you think that people say overcomplicate success? Like they just overthink it and make it too hard?
Oh, we overcomplicate everything. Listen, this is I love to do this. I'll be working with a group. Let's say I've got 100 people in a room, and now it's usually a leadership group. I'll say, raise your hand if you frequently have this thought. The thought is, I'm making this way more complicated than it needs to be. And every hand in the room goes up, including both of mine.
Right.
I overthink everything. I make everything too complicated. And people say, well, why do we do that? We do it because it's so easy. Anybody can make something complicated. It's hard to make something simple.
Okay, so what Sourena said was, he can remember back when he used to work with you, and he would email you the most complicated question, and your response was always the simplest answer.
Yeah.
Not simple as in smart simple.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Okay.
I get
it.
Yeah, and then your thought would always be, it can't be that easy. But
You know what this is making me think of? Mark Twain once wrote a 2-page letter to a friend, and at the end of it he said, sorry for the length of this letter. If I had had more time, it would have been shorter. Think about it. Think about it. I read this not too long ago, that making something better is usually not a question of what can I add to it. It's usually a question of what can I take away from it. How can I simplify it? Listen, complicated is the enemy of success for all of us. Simple is the absolute supercharger of success. And it could be that I'm so attuned to that because I really do tend to overthink everything. When the answer is ultimately I'll try to get from a 3-page answer to a 1-paragraph answer. And the 1 paragraph is always better.
yeah, Sourena said I used to email you like the longest question, and the answer would be 1 minute. But it's kind of funny how that works because we tend to overthink things. It's analysis to paralysis type thinking, and it's really
and the thing is though, Sourena, I probably had to think for an hour and a half to come up with that simple answer because my initial answer would have been 2 times longer than your question. But I've learned to really work hard at paring it down, get to the essence of it. I know with so many marketing materials, mine included, we'll take 3 paragraphs to say something that should take a couple of sentences. I love the saying that I think it was Einstein that said, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. Yeah, I think it is.
I love the book. I love the book. I need to talk about that.
So Sourena was hoping to talk about the book Magnetic. Have you read that one? Are you familiar with it?
I don't have one sitting around. Yeah, I like that book. It's funny. I've written 8 books, and I tell people that a couple of them are really pretty good. But magnetic. Here's the idea around magnetic. It's how do you draw customers to you, and the way you do it. Disney is the perfect example. Here's the way magnetic works. You go to Disney, and their whole core purpose is make people happy. You go to Disney, it's very expensive. We all know that. This is not a cheap day trip or cheap vacation. So you give them all your money, but they make everybody happy. Not 100%, but far and away, 90+++% come away very happy. And what do those people do? They go back and tell everybody else how fabulous it was. And that then drives more people to Disney like a magnet. I would pose this question to all of us. How many of you have been on the internet in the last week because you were thinking of buying something, a product or a service, or joining a health club or going to a restaurant or anything, and you went on the internet to see what other people were saying about it? And the moment of truth was stars. If they average 4.5 stars out of 1,000 reviews, you're in. You're at least going to go to the website. If they average 1.2 stars, you don't even consider them. So what I say about me doesn't really carry much weight anymore. What all of my customers say about me, that's what the market's listening to. And that's the idea behind magnetic.
Can you tell about Mama's Fish House?
Can you tell us about
Mama's Fish House.
Mama's
Fish House. Fish House.
What's the first letter?
Fish
House?
Yeah.
Mama's Fish House?
Mama's Fish House. Holy moly. Listen, my family went to Hawaii 2 years ago on vacation. And I had a friend of mine, John Bledsoe, said, you got to go to Mama's Fish House. Now, John is not an easy customer to impress. He said, you got to go to Mama's Fish House. So I went online to see what everybody else said about Mama's Fish House. And they all said, this is expensive. Take 3 credit cards with you.
Oh boy.
And you've got to go. We went to Mama's Fish House, and guess what I told everybody after that? You got to go to Mama's Fish House. Everything about it. The setting on the beach, that poster behind you guys, that's terrible compared to the setting at Mama's Fish House. It's gorgeous. The people treat you so beautifully and so warmly and so professionally. And the food, I can't even describe. Yeah, Mama's Fish House, they never have to advertise. They never have to say one thing about themselves. They are magnetic because they do such a good job. And people say, well, how do I get people to say good stuff about me? You knock their socks off. That's how you do it. You become so good at what you do that people tell everybody else about it. So it goes back to hard work and being smart and being relevant and being really good at what you do.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Are you going to tell a cool story? All right, here's your story, sir.
One day I was on the computer. I people asked me, you.
So you saw Facebook ads for Larry and for Joe?
The event.
For the event?
And he said, come Thursday with Andrew, and I know you get to go to their house.
And so the ad was, come, learn from Larry, learn from Joe, and then you get to go have a night at Larry's house.
Yep.
I didn't care about anything. I didn't care about anything else. I just want to shake their hands.
And they had impressed you so much that you didn't care about anything else. The only thing you wanted to do was shake their hands.
Yeah. And yeah, everything else was a bonus.
And everything else was a bonus?
Everything else was amazing.
But everything was amazing.
Yeah, and it was the best. It was the best professional experience that I had.
And it was one of the best professional experiences that you had.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
You know what's interesting about that, Sourena?
Yeah.
You have told me this story, I don't know how many times. And it goes back to Joe's point. If you give somebody an amazing experience or you give them something good to say, they will say it. And that sells itself.
Well, that's the way I work with you. Because I don't want to be some guy. I don't want to be some guy who's get up there and say, it's making guys.
Right, so you don't want to just get up there and be a guy. You were taught this, and you don't want to be the guy who just gets up there and tells one story after another.
I don't want to be the guy who and anything, everything else. I don't want to do business any other way.
And you don't want to do business any other way. You want to get up there and you want to deliver something that's meaningful, that's impactful, that's useful.
Yeah, because like, there are people in the church. There
are dozens of people in the world today
that do what you
that do what you did.
And this way.
What?
They can do that.
And they can do it without having a speech impediment.
Yeah, I have to do better and I have to become a category.
And in order for you to succeed, you have to be just what we were talking, what Joe wrote about,
Yeah.
which is a category of one.
Yeah.
You know, I was just going to say I had a thought while you were talking about that, and thank you for saying that about what Larry and I did, Sourena. I appreciate that. I truly do. For example, on social media, I had a speaker ask me not too long ago, said, what should I say on social media to get somebody to hire me? And they were thinking in terms of, you should hire me because. Nobody's going to hire you because you tell them to hire you. What you do is you put ideas on there that are so useful or inspiring or motivating that they go, wow, this is really good stuff. Let's bring that person in. You don't say, hire me. You give them value. You give it to them. And they want more. And that's why they hire you. It's exactly what you just said, is to when you're on that stage, you say something that's meaningful to them and relevant to them and useful and inspiring to them.
Yeah, what happened to your apartment?
Yeah, so what kind of habits do you have that set you apart from other people, like people in your industry or just people in general, business, anything specific, Sourena? Right, so Sourena has this philosophy that nothing in your life is going to change until you change your habits and you change your routines, which makes sense.
So tell me about habits are produced to do that way.
And so the question is, what habits do you have that are specific to Joe Calloway?
Okay. One is, I'll go back to something I said earlier. My default answer to a customer, potential customer, business partner, my default answer is yes. There's maybe the best customer service expert in the world is John DeJulius. And if you work with John, there's a rule. I love this. Here's the rule. The answer is yes. Now, what's your question? If I can possibly say yes to a customer, I do. I want to be super easy to work with. Another one, this way it may sound like a minor thing. It's huge. Today's Thursday. On Tuesday, I got an email from a company in Canada, and they said, you were recommended to us, here we go again, magnetic, by one of our employees who used to work with a bank in Canada where you spoke to them. You did some presentations. So we'd like to talk to you about that. And I said, thank you, that's great, let's talk. excuse me, I said, let me do something that might be helpful. Let me overnight you some of my books, because it'll give you a really good feel for what I'm about, just thumbing through them. And it cost me almost $200 to overnight those books to Ontario from where I am in Tennessee. And there are people in this business that would say, why would you spend that much money to do that? That's an investment. And it's one of my habits. The habit is immediate response. If you send, and it's funny, yours, Sourena, you sent me an email about us doing this, and somehow that email got lost in my files. It got put into a wrong file, and I didn't get back to you for days. Normally, I'll answer an email, unless I'm on an airplane or on stage or something, I'll answer an email within an hour. I'll answer an email the second it comes in. I get back to people immediately. So those are the kinds of habits. I'll tell you a personal habit. I know that I do my best work early in the day, and I get up 4:30 or 5 every single day because I do my best creative work before the sun even comes up. And I know that about myself, so that's a habit.
Yeah.
So how do you do this?
Sourena said that when he worked with you, exactly. He would email you, and 90% of the emails were responded to within the hour. And that's something else that I knew about Joe before we ever spoke with him, because you've told that a lot too. And it goes back to, building the reputation and.
I know how busy you are. So, because I don't know because but I feel like I'm behind.
Right. Sourena said he knows how busy you are. And when you would respond that quickly, it made him feel like a big guy. That's right, Sourena?
And you know what, Sourena? I have people that say, well, I can't just respond to everything immediately. I've got important stuff to do. And I say, okay, like what? I could be in the middle of working on a program that I'm going to do tomorrow. Somebody another client or a friend like you, a business partner, emails me. I can take 20 seconds and say, Sourena, I'm working on a program. I'll get back to you tomorrow afternoon. Send. Fine. I can go right back to work on the project, but you know that you are important to me. And I've responded, and you go, that's cool, that's fine, I can wait till tomorrow. But he got back to me immediately. Why people don't do that, I can't process it. I don't understand why people say, well, I'm too busy to create incredible relationships with immediate responses, which takes that much effort.
No, you just get off of it.
Yeah, and the other thing, it makes the other person feel good, but it also gets it off your plate, like it's done.
Yes, and I just make a note, Sourena, tomorrow afternoon, and here's the question. You've hit on a really important point. Now, I'm not saying everybody should work this way. Probably most people shouldn't. But I'm one of those people that if I'm in the middle of a heavy thought project, as stuff comes in, I handle it and get rid of it. Just like you said, I don't want it piling up in my head. I'd rather get it done, get it out of the way, and then I'm clear to go back to that core creative work that I'm doing, for example. And again, I'm not saying everybody should work that way. But it works for me.
If you've never
Right, because otherwise, if you don't respond, then you're thinking about it constantly.
Yes.
Let me get, I mean, there have been times where I got to ethics, trying but I think I spent time, I was a mentor.
Right, because there's, like you said, in your life, there's been times when you've had things to do, and, you think about it, and you thought about it, and thought about it, and thought about it, and it's something that would take 20 minutes to actually do, but you've spent the last 10 hours just thinking about it.
Yeah, I had somebody say to me once, said, I'm not going to try to be super organized because that feels like it closes me in. And I say, no, it liberates you. It sets you free. If you're organized and you do things as they come up, man, that's freedom. I can't not be organized because I can't stand carrying all that stuff as a burden to think about all the time. So, yeah, do it now. That's a mantra of mine.
What inspires you?
So what inspires you?
Boy, art inspires me. Music inspires me. I'm an avid reader. It's downstairs. I just started a brand new biography of Winston Churchill that's so thick. It'll take me 3 years to read this book, but the reviews say it's just unbelievable. My children, my family are my biggest inspiration, my biggest joy. People say, what are you passionate about? I'm passionate about my family. I'm passionate about my friends. You know, I wouldn't say I'm passionate about my work. I enjoy it. I take great responsibility about my work, and I certainly try to do the best job, but I'm passionate about the people in my life, and especially Annette and the girls and my friends. So yeah, that's what inspires me.
What advice do you have for new entrepreneurs?
So you have 2 more questions?
Yeah.
All right, so in Sourena Life, 2 more questions, like 5
Yep.
more. But this question is, what advice do you have? You said for new entrepreneurs, Sourena?
Yes. Entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so what advice do you have for entrepreneurs?
Particularly for somebody that's starting a business, look at it at least partially, maybe even mostly, as an information gathering process. You come up with an idea, you think it's going to be great, you do some market research and everybody says it's going to be great. Get it out there, and get it out there sooner rather than later. And the market will then tell you what changes you need to make. And you will almost certainly have to make changes. It's rare that anybody hits it out of the park right off the bat, their first try. So for entrepreneurs, you've got to be patient with the process of making adjustments and changing course, and not be discouraged by that, and do it quickly. Do things as quickly as you possibly can.
And then my favorite question.
Your favorite question, what is it?
Okay.
You want to set up the question? Okay, so here we go.
When I signed up to meet you.
When you signed up to meet Joe,
You sent me a book. Your books.
you sent Sourena a box of your books
And a DVD.
and a DVD.
And that DVD had a piece from National Speakers Association.
And it had a speech from the National Speakers Association.
And I put that in, I put that in my DVD. I put that in my DVD for my feet up on the island and listened. And it was amazing.
Right, and you listened to that DVD, and it was amazing.
And if I describe it, I would not do justice.
So you can't describe it and do it justice.
I'm gonna do something. You know about that.
All right, and since you know what Sourena's talking about, would you go ahead and describe that DVD, please?
Yeah, that was a speech I gave. It was a keynote speech to the National Speakers Association. I was scared to death because I was going to be standing up in front of 2,000 of my friends and colleagues and peers. I was petrified. And I wrote a speech specifically for that group. And the title of it and the message was Let It Go. And I posed the question, look at your life, look at your work, and instead of thinking in terms of here's what I need to do, change the question to what do I need to let go of? And it may be that this was pretty much a career-oriented, a work-oriented speech. So I talked about all sorts of different things that people in our business might need to let go of. And I had done a lot of talking with speakers before the speech, getting examples from people I knew would be in the audience. And I called them out. Glenna Salisbury, I said, Glenna, you did business presentations. And then you realized that what you loved was dealing with people on a heart level. And so you let go of a very successful business speaking career and started what became a very successful inspirational speaking career. But the point was it was really scary to let go of that. And sometimes we have to let go of something that's working really well, but it's not bringing us joy. And it's not bringing us satisfaction or a sense of peace of mind or whatever. And so that was the message. And thank you for saying that about it, Sourena. Every now and then somebody will say, what's the best speech you ever gave in your life? And I say that was it. The Let It Go speech at National Speakers Association. But yeah, very simple message. What do you need to let go of?
Tell me about it, Andy.
So Sourena asked for you to tell about the ending of the speech, because you said the ending was just like...
The ending of the speech, well, I set it up at the start of the speech when I said, look, this speech is going to be different than any you've ever seen before. I said, for one thing, I've got to leave before I finish. And everybody laughed. And we came to the end, and I said, okay. I said, before we wrap up, I want you to watch a short video that I made to just kind of get you thinking about what you're going to do when you leave here. So let's watch that video. And I walked off the stage, and it was a really inspirational video with a lot of great quotes from great people, from people that were actually sitting in the audience. And then at the end of that video, boom, another video comes on that's playing Bob Seger's Kathmandu, which is, I think I'm going to Kathmandu. So it's this loud rock music about leaving. It shows an American Airlines jet flying away, and then words come up that say, Joe has left the building. Joe has left the building. And it goes on for another couple of minutes talking about, he's gone, folks. It's over. He's not coming back. I went out the back door of the JW Marriott Hotel in Scottsdale, Arizona, got into my rental car. This was the second day of a 5-day convention. I drove to the airport, got on a plane, and came home because I said I was going to leave. I left, and it would have been bogus for me to then show up in the hallway. So I went home, and it was maybe the coolest thing I ever did with a speech.
That's pretty awesome. And you were watching, and it said Joe's not going to be here at the end. That's awesome. That was super creative too.
It was fun.
You use what every day?
There's every year I make up every machine I'm making changes a little bit.
Right. So Sourena said that, that whole idea of letting it go is something that he uses even now and probably won't stop using, because there's always something that you need to be letting go of.
I do too, Sourena. I do too.
I have a 4-year-old.
Right. So the example right now is that you have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old.
I want to be there. I can't wait. I can't be there in the way I want to be.
Yeah. And so what Sourena said was that his physical disability doesn't allow him to be there for his children the way he'd like to be.
But that made me sad. But when I'm with them, I'm 100% with them.
Right. And so that whole thing, it makes him feel badly. But when he is with them, he is with them.
Yeah.
I get it. That go. The idea of speaking with actors. See, but I get it. Let those things be but I live in what if?
All right. So you had to let go of thinking about the things that you can't do and start focusing on the things that you can do, because otherwise you would always be living your life in the whole what if, what would be possible if.
I can't do the thing about the thing that that's what I get. That's what I got.
And so that's what you got out of that speech.
Yeah. That's it. Thank you very much.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome, and thank you for saying that, Sourena. That means a lot to me.
Any final thoughts?
So Joe, do you have any final thoughts for us today?
Oh gosh, just keep learning, stay engaged with people. I know the thing that does my heart the most good in the world is connecting with people, which is exactly what we've been doing. And to be cliche about it, at the end of the day, I believe with all my heart, it's all about relationships. Nothing else in life compares to the relationships that we create. So, yeah, that's my thought.
Well, thank you, Joe. My name is Roy. I'm the video game. It's right. And I'm going to go out there and be it. I'm ready.
So first, thank you, Joe. Second, Sourena Vasseghi is the speaker who can't speak, the writer who can't write, and he wants all of you to go out there and be amazing.
And he share like it.
Yeah. And if you like the video, just share it, like it, love it, get the word out there. Thanks again, Joe. We can't thank you enough. And everybody, go be amazing.
Peace.